Well, hello again. This is Marcia Sinitar, and yes, it's another archive selection. And I was talking to a group of healthcare professionals, psychologists, and like that. This is my usual group, except for the leaders in corporate environments, which I work with sometimes at this point. Now, when I talk to a group of peers, which this was, and this is the Q&A section of the talk, I tend to be very casual. When I talk to a group of, let us say, laypersons, the readers of books or whatever, I'm less casual, but pretty much always off the cuff. So, you're going to hear me use the word normal. We would not call people normal in a psychological setting, which I was in. We would probably use the word standard or typical or something like that. Typical, standard is the reference word for normalcy. Normal has a tendency to sound like a culturally learned response. Okay, so please, in your listening, when you hear the word normal, just substitute the word typical or standard, and you'll be on the right track of my meaning. That's number one. Number two, I talk about circumstances in my childhood which I did not like. I speak about those circumstances at length in my autobiography. Please look at that. I think you can get it online on Amazon. It's called Joyful in the Silence. And it talks about how I went from having to caretake as a child for let us say, a non-standard behavior in a relative. I could see it would be the death of me, literally. So I got out. And that's what that's about, just to bring you up to speed. The third thing, and that's what I'll say now, for now, this is about positive structuring. I go into a discussion about, for example, the old typewriter, IBM Selectric, as a concrete example of how you run through an error and change it. Many of us who are listening have never used an IBM, have never used a typewriter. So just fast forward through that if you don't like it or if you can't understand it. Now here's where I give my usual commercial to work with a qualified and trusted helping professional, a counselor, a therapist, a clergy member, a spiritual director, someone who's used to working with people in transition, who want to improve behavior, become more wholesome. You don't want to listen to an excerpt from a much longer, more articulate, let's say, explanation of a method for changing behavior and go on your own without some sort of qualified, trusting sounding board to make sure that you're not going off the deep end or going against the grain of something that is healthy for you, and so forth. So that's the commercial. Don't work alone on something that's complicated, complex, subtle, like that. That's what I have to say in my foreword, and I hope you'll enjoy this. Thank you so much for listening.
And finally, I want to talk about how we build a new idea, metanoia, which is really shifting your paradigm, as Mary put it this morning, your ground of being. The example that I give, one of the examples in Living Happily Ever After, is of this woman who has been abused, and she has to go from a point of view that says, I am an abused person, undeserving of love and good treatment, to a person that says, I am deserving of love and proper treatment. And this took her a long time. Now, in this book, I give several different stages of what I call this kind of work, this metanoic work. In the case of someone who's abused or who needs therapy, I give the example of this woman and show how she has gone into therapy with a very gifted psychoanalyst. They repeated certain key ideas in the form of affirmations. It is a way of repeating certain key ideas and reparenting so that on the other side of it, the person comes out and they're better. And that's the idea, is to get better. So you see how it's from I don't have to I have, all the way through. Another one would be the idea of healing, physical or emotional. I do not advocate using this for physical healing. As I said earlier, I'm not a physician. But I do give the example of a physical healing of Joseph Chilton Pearce, who's written this up in his book, Crack in the Cosmic Egg. He talks about his wife who, after having been diagnosed as having cancer, submits to what he calls the priests of the scalpel. And she has everything cut out of her that can be taken, and she still has cancer. And so then Pierce, decides to take matters into his own hands. He takes her away to some retreat, and over months, with a number of fasting, and he says, never leaving her mind alone, he begins to repeat messages of faith and healing to her. And lo and behold, when they return to civilization and present themselves to the doctors, she's pronounced cured. Now, he says that the problem in her case came when they agreed to return for periodic checkups. And the reason that he feels that it undermined them is because this broke that category that they were trying to establish. It broke the reality they were trying to build. I think there's something to that. If it was me, I'm not sure that I would be able to resist going back for checkups. I think we're going to see a lot of experimentation in this area, and probably the people that will be the most brave are the people who have no other choice. But for emotional healing, I don't think you could do better than a combination of therapy and repetitiveness in your behavior. Your focus has to be on what you want. The affirmations that you're working with, your behaviors, and these meditations that can help so much. And there's just all kinds of literature out there now that can help you. For people who are what I would call normal, and who's normal, but, functioning, I think, yeah, he is. I think you can structure your own program, and so that's a little bit how I'd like to talk with you about right now. If you think about this work as changing your mind, you're changing your mind. The behaviors have to come along, as we said. The behaviors are like the seeds that you plant. But somewhere along the line, there's an idea that has to be changed. Like in the woman who was abused, she has to go from I'm not deserving of good treatment to I am deserving of good treatment. The woman that I mentioned in Living Happily Ever After who survived abuse had the idea that she was okay because she didn't respect her abusers. I myself had the thought that when I was small that there was something valuable in myself that could thrive better in another circumstance. I didn't like my circumstance. So somewhere in there must have been the idea that I deserved to try to get something better. Right? But sometimes we don't believe that. So then you want to think of this new idea as something that you're building like you would build a structure. So you mustn't start at the ceiling. Where we tend to go as human beings is we have this tremendous ambition. And we want to be at stage Z instead of stage A. So I think what we have to do is structure the building process of ideas in a very logical way, in a very convincing way, in a very gradual, gentle way. And I'll be very specific in just a minute. Let me go through it once. Now, you're building up the new idea, and gradually you're extinguishing the old idea. Now, how would you extinguish an old idea? I'm not going to spend much time on it, and I don't spend much time in the book either. You don't reinforce it with action. You don't pay too much attention. When you see yourself doing it, you don't beat yourself up. You know, the person that's a chronic dieter, and they eat a cookie, and then they get mad at themselves for eating the cookie, so they punish themselves by eating the package. Okay, the package is the reinforcement. That's the reward. It's the negative payoff. The one cookie is no big deal. Forget it. That's how you extinguish it. Now, you cannot do that if this is an extreme case. I'm speaking normal here. Okay. So it's what you put your attention on that's going to grow stronger in your life. What you put your attention on is going to grow stronger. What we've done today, through the entire day, we didn't have one exercise on your problems. Not one. Now, you brought them up, but I didn't. All right. Registration means you document the thing that you're trying to build. You reinforce what you're trying to build. You register it in your consciousness. How do you do it? By how you reward yourself. You eat one cookie. Fine. You reward yourself by not eating the pack. And then you register it by saying mentally, just quietly, I'm the kind of person that knows when to stop. Period. That's what thin people do. Or you could actually reward yourself with, I'm the kind of person that knows when to stop, or I'm the kind of person that's learning how to stop. I'll go for a walk and give myself a real reward because I sure love being outside, or whatever. Or I'll spend some time with my child, or I'll listen to some music that I love because I'm such a great person. Now, we'll go back over this, but I'm just kind of going through. And then repetition. You have to do it again, 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 again. Think of this like Chinese water torture. I'm going to go through it again. Let's take the cookie. That's the simplest one. You eat a cookie, it's a mistake. You're trying to learn not to. So you repeat. You go back through the problem. No, you wait until the next time, and you repeat the cycle. You stop at 1, or 2 if you can't stop at 1, and then you say to yourself, I'm the kind of person that knows when to stop, and then you give yourself a reward. So you're documenting it. You're documenting the new behavior. Here's the thing. I went through this last time, but I got a lot of mail on it, and I want to repeat it again. If you haven't seen an IBM Selectric typewriter, I'd like to have you find one, the old one, not the new word processors, the old IBM Selectric. How many have seen one or worked with it? Okay. The tab on the IBM Selectric is a metaphor for this entire thing. And here's the way it works. When you set the tab on the IBM Selectric, you have to get your carriage to the right spot and push it manually, push the tab button manually, and then it's set. Now, the erasing is what I'm talking about, and the setting of a new tab. Erasing amounts to extinguishing. Setting the new behavior is setting the new tab. And here's how it works. You have to take the carriage for the erase by hand to the tab spot. You keep your finger on the tab, and you run the carriage through. You pull it, you can feel it pulling through the problem, through the tab. Okay. Then you go over to where you want, and you set the tab consciously with your finger. All right, so the erasure is as follows. You go to the behavior that you don't want, and you walk through it consciously. And you set it where you want it. That's the cookie. Do you see? I mean, I'll go through it again. Okay, I want to stop eating at one cookie. I don't want to be the kind of person that can never have another cookie in my life. I'm just using that as an example. All right. So I take a cookie. That's the old tab. No, excuse me. That's the new tab. The old one is the package. I stop at 1. And the way I set the tab for the human being is I document it by conscious awareness, and I reward it. Somehow I give a little reward, even if it's just acknowledging it. You do not have to make a big production out of this. But consciousness is the tab. Consciousness is the button. The affirmation, I'm the kind of person that knows when to stop, is the button, is the tab button. That's the new button. You got to keep pushing it, and you've got to repeat it, and repeat it, and repeat it. How do you think you learned it in the first place? It didn't just happen one time unless it was trauma, and we're talking normal now. All right. Let's talk a little bit about something that you might want to change, and then I can use something other than a cookie. Yes. Right. Okay, so then the problem is the old tab is procrastination, and the new one would be at least to begin it. All right, then you know how to break it up into small bits, and what you're doing is you're watching yourself begin. You don't need to finish it to be setting the new tab. You need to be setting the tab to the progress of this project. So what you have to do, going back to the IBM thing, you have to consciously and purposefully go to the problem and work through it. But not too big. You mustn't have this idealized picture in your mind that you're going to do the whole project in a sitting. All you have to do is sit at your desk, get out the papers, and let's say outline it, or some other little manageable bit, and then stop and notice it and say to yourself, or even write out, I'm the kind of person that starts her projects on time. Something like that. And you might even in the beginning give yourself a reward, and you have to do it several times. That sets the tab. Yes. I am saying that's exactly what I'm saying. I am saying that love is your only way out. It's the only way out. It's the same thing as if you had a child who was afraid of a project and you tried to burden that child with the whole project. You would have a case on your hand. That's what we all are. So love is it. In fact, I have a technique, I call it practicing love. If you remember the exercise at lunch, try the following as a homework exercise. Try to go through the whole day practicing love just for yourself. You'll love this because you're already doing it. And then you'll have to ask yourself, what does it mean to be loving to myself? You're welcome. Thank you.